Well, thanks very much for inviting me again. And, I've had a great time in your presentations before and your webinars, and sort of looking back, I think, the industry changes so much just month to month. And, with the sort of the crypto winter perspective that people have had for the last few months, I think that it's a great opportunity to sort of distill, all these different trends that have been playing out, especially on the entertainment and gaming side of Web3, which is what we focus on. And for those who haven't heard our talks before, we're doing sort of a mobile game that ties in AR and VR in a sort of a Unity built metaverse that we have that's an abstract metaverse, and combines that with where the user is now, and sort of like a role-playing game that both of which we're integrating with NFTs, and we just recently started to build out on Polygon. So there's lots to talk about, and I think when you look back at trends and like some of our previous talks here, I think one of the most interesting things on the gaming side is what is the purpose of a game that you're building, especially one that potentially it's either built for blockchain or is blockchain enabled. And in the last year after Axie Infinity, everything began to focus on the play to earn model and the mechanics of that, and the tokenization and the economics of it, sort of looking at gaming from that one perspective. And I think what's most interesting is, in the last few months, people have really started to focus not so much on play to earn, but play and earn, which I think, rightfully restores the purpose of gaming, which is, very different from grinding at a job to make money, or, going to a casino to gamble and make money. I think that, it restores the narrative side, it restores the actual experience that you're having, and puts that first and foremost, and then ties in, different ways that you can, create smart contracts that create a community around it, that give you certain roles that perhaps change over time, that have springing value. And I think that's much more compatible with what most people think of as, the reasons why you would play a game in the first place. In terms of, popular AAA games and, Fortnite, Zelda, everything that, Call of Duty, there's an element of sort of experience and escapism and skill that you have that wasn't really present in the early play to earn games. They were sort of fun to play because you could make money, and fun to play because, they were basically commoditized. So if you were lucky enough to be participating, you had probably put a fair amount of money into it. And, as you look to the next evolution of gaming, I think that it really has to be much larger than that. I was at Consensus in Texas a couple months ago, and someone pointed out in one of the conference talks that the number of people at Consensus outnumbered the people in Decentraland and Sandbox and all the top, experiences in the metaverse at that time. And I think that that's a real problem, because so many of those games were built for the number that people throw around is like 1,000 whales that had crypto to burn and wanted to put it to use. And that's very different from your average 18-year-old who's waiting for the bus or on their lunch break at work and doesn't have a whole lot of money and wants to have an experience and a game and something fun that they can perhaps do with their friends as a multiplayer experience and talk about and share on social media and go on Twitch. That's a very different sort of escapism from your day than the play to earn world, basically, where you're sort of grinding for dollars and performing tasks to make money. That's too much like people's every day, like the rest of their day. Like that's where they go to work and they perform tasks and they make money. it's not so much fun to do that in a gaming context. And I think that's like, you know, in the past 6 months, that's the most interesting change and development that I've seen, you know, at all these conferences and in terms of other projects that are being built and funded, is that you really have to have something that's inherently fun before you integrate it with blockchain to make it scalable and sustainable. And so I think that's one major trend which is positive, and where, you know, the crypto winter sort of might be a good thing to sort of distill some of these ideas more and focus on the projects that need to get built, or that should be built. Secondly, I wanted to sort of touch on something I talked about before, which is when you're talking about sort of spatial virtual worlds and world building, there's two competing, I don't know if they're competing, but they're two separate, distinct reasons why you would have a virtual world. One is sort of like literal VR world, you know, so like Google Street Maps, or, you know, virtual real estate and virtual tours of actual spaces where you want to, where I'm here, but all of a sudden I want to be, you know, experiencing a different place literally on my phone and be able to interact with it and to see what it's like to walk around there. The second spatial virtual world is, you know, more in the entertainment and gaming side, is a fantasy world. So you don't want it to be exactly like your world, you know, and you don't want it to be an exact, you know, overlay of your everyday life. You know, you don't want to be in Google Street Maps and be bombarded with ads and, you know, different brands that are just sort of placed there, because that's not inherently fun, you know. And I think when you look at some of those experiences that got built 4 or 5 years ago on the, you know, Web 2 side, the immersive web, you know, before all the metaverse developments, and, you know, I think that some of those literal experiences that CNN and all the news companies like, you know, New York Times, all of the web VR sort of 360 videos and things like that, they were way too literal to be worthwhile. And I think that was something that was missed originally, that people assumed that you would want to experience something literally in that, you know, span of time, when really it could just as easily be non-literal and abstract and, you know, immersive in a different way that sort of leverages the potential, you know, to sort of use metaphors and to use abstraction as opposed to literal. Like the example I was using with a friend a couple of weeks ago is, if you have, you know, a main street in a town like I have here, and everyone probably does, if you remember the last time you walked down that street, you don't remember every person that you met there or that you saw walking with you, and you don't remember what all the doors, you know, look like to all the stores, because you probably had a purpose that you were walking down the street to meet someone. So you don't even notice the people that you're not there to meet, and you don't notice, you know, stores that aren't relevant to you, that you're not looking to shop in right now. Whereas if that were built out as an experience, the problem with the first iterations of that was that, you know, if you have a hotspot on every door and a designer is building it so that there's 10 hotspots walking down the street, if I'm experiencing that, I don't know whether I'm supposed to try all of them or whether I'm supposed to, you know, pick 1 or 2. And it's confusing because you're confronted with, you say, 10 options, whereas when you're in the real world, it's really like infinite options, but you're focused only on 1 or 2. So, you know, you're walking down the street, you could stop and talk to every person and say, hello, like, how are you? What's your name? But no one does that, you know, and in these sort of literal virtual experiences, you're sort of asked to do that, and your brain doesn't really, it sort of rejects it. If you see 10 or 20 spots that you can interact with, you don't know what order you're supposed to do them in. And there was a design put into it that you're not aware of what they were, you know, attempting to accomplish with it. So it doesn't have a designer's note that says just pick 1, or, you know, try them all. And I think that that's where, you know, it sort of short circuits your thinking when you're in these spatial worlds, unless it's built like an experience. And the example I always use is, you know, Main Street at Disney World. When you walk down the street, there's only a few stores, and they're fake doors, and they're like, you know, the apartments upstairs aren't real, and it's a set. And the whole purpose of that is not to spend time there and not go anywhere else, like, you know, at a shopping mall or something, but the whole purpose is to shuttle you from that point into the park and to take you from, you know, the real world into this Disney world, and to get your mind prepped for it. So it's sort of like the difference between those two is really critical for, I think, building, you know, immersive experiences and virtual worlds, because in the Disney World example, you're meant to be shuttled through and to be taken deeper into a story, whereas in literal virtual worlds, you're meant to sort of, you know, stay there and try things like you would at the shopping mall or something like that. And it's a different purpose from a narrative, you know, design perspective, which I think is people are starting to see that, I think, and some of the better projects are starting to build that way. And that's where the fun comes in, is, you know, it's actually an experience that's, you know, immersive and it's fun. And, you know, there's a sense of place where you're sort of, you know, captivated by what you're seeing and not focused on where you are right now in the real world so much. So I think that's where our project, and, you know, we try to tie in AR to get you into our virtual world, because AR is, I think, the best way to reach people in the here and now, whether they're on the couch or at the water cooler, or, you know, sitting at their desk or bored at a meeting. It's something that can be done very quickly with AR effects and, you know, filters and lenses. And it's something that, you know, younger audiences already have in their, you know, in their daily life pre-metaverse. And I think that you start to see some of the interesting, you know, ads and professionally designed lenses by, you know, agencies and stuff, focus more on world AR, as it's known, where it actually flips the camera and starts to integrate with where you are right now and weave that into a storyline. So I think that that's another sort of trend, is how do you fit these experiences into someone's daily life? And I think that, you know, with, say, movies, you know, you're probably not going to go to a movie at 9 a.m. You just don't, you know. It's like you say to your friends, maybe Friday night at 7, we'll go to the movies for 2 hours. So you make an appointment, and that's a fun thing to do, and you go there, or you go to a baseball game. Same thing with, you know, traditional gaming. You know, when it's tied to a console or a computer, it's, you know, you have to make an appointment with yourself to actually go and do that. And, you know, it could either be solitary, or you could be on Twitch with your friends, and, you know, but there's a very specific activity and time of day and mindset for that it's relaxing, and it's, you know, your 2 hours to play a game and escape from your daily life. With Metaverse and everything, people think of it that you would want to do that and spend, you know, that hour or 2 hours, you know, when you get home from work or something, and go into the Metaverse. I think that the better, easier way to integrate with people's lives is sort of in the short form hooks that come throughout your day, you know. So it's more integrating with people's Web2 social media lifestyle than it is competing with their, you know, legacy gaming time. And I think that that's something that's important to see too, is that, you know, when you create a spatial world and you understand the concept around it, you're introduced to it, you can pop in and out of it at various points during the day. And I think that that's where the opportunity is, you know, on mobile at least, to actually make relevant brands and experiences that can easily integrate. You know, when we were starting this project, we started an early iteration in Web 2 years ago, before the business model had evolved, and Web 3 provides so many more opportunities for funding interesting projects than Web 2 did, because Web 2 was all ad and click based, and it's a totally different mindset when you're sort of triggering ads on websites and meant to check out articles and listicles and all sorts of things in random succession. That's very different from the purpose of Web 3, which is more like dwelling in an environment or a theme, and even like an abstract theme. And it's more like, it's much more compatible with branding. I think that there's actually some feeling that you have, or some vibe that you have from being in this experience, that makes you happy, or it makes you, excited or scared, or, something that's more impactful than just sort of fleeting information of Web 2 that was all competing to get your attention. And that's sort of, when you look at the purpose of, and the mindset of these, the better experiences, people want to spend time in there. It's not that it's like a chore, or that they have to learn something, or, eat your vegetables, and, that it has some functionality that, like websites have, like this one teaches you this, and this one tells you the celebrity gossip, and this one tells you the sports news. It doesn't need to have those functions in the way Web 2 did. It's more like sort of like a meditative experience, almost like going to the beach. I went to the beach a couple of weeks ago. It's like, you don't want all sorts of distractions while you're at the beach. You want to just sit there for hours and relax in the sun and hear the waves and maybe go in the water, but you don't need all sorts of, constant activity and people selling you things and stuff like that. You wouldn't want that. And I think that's sort of the key difference between, well-built immersive experiences or games, and sort of ones that try to be too functional and too useful and too, literal, is that, you want your mind to be working at a slower speed, that you're basically just shutting out things that are distractions, and almost like a meditation or like a spa or something. That's what you want users to feel when you're in there, that would keep them there. And I think, it has all sorts of opportunities, and for the evolution from Web 2 to Web 3, I think is, really amazing. And I think it has all sorts of potential for new experiences, but you have to sort of think of why the person is there and what is the function. And it has to be a fun or, entertaining function that you're going for, as opposed to something that's too literal. But anyway, I'm not sure how much time I have left, but if there's any questions or anything, I could answer them now or at the end.
Yeah, I think that the audience can ask a question if they have now. If not, then leave a question in the chat. Anyway, because thanks, Jim, because he is already thoughtful people, and then think about different insight about the metaverse experience design. And then he actually gave a very important tip how to design metaverse experience. Like, we need to think about everyday life, right? Because the metaverse will be the part of our life in the future. So we need to think about it, how we experience in every day, and how we reflect that experience in the metaverse. So I think that that's valuable practical tip, right? Just to design your metaverse, right? Okay.